Welcome to week 7 of Project Limitless. And this week we were placing a little bit of attention on one of the major areas of your life that you were wanting to enrich or improve. And I trust you started to discover what that looks like a little bit more in terms of what does that look like in terms of the tangible elements of if you are enriching that dimension of your life, if you are experiencing it the way that you want it to be experiencing, what would change, what would be the tangible things that change, as well as starting to get an insight into what are the intangibles. How would you feel about that? What does that mean for your life? And this week we're going to start to move into looking a little bit more at purpose. And the topic around purpose is one of the most powerful experiences or feelings that you can tap into in life, and at the same time it's also one of the potentially let's call it dangerous topics, that if you get it, if you misunderstand it, if you place pressure on yourself, or if you create insecurity around this topic, it can also have quite insecure effects on your life as well. And what I mean by that is I spent most of my life asking myself that question: why am I here? Like, what's the purpose of my life? And the rest of this class this week is going to be deepening our understanding about how do we get a clearer understanding of this notion of purpose. What does it mean? How do we understand it more deeply? How do we tap into that? And importantly, how do we come to terms with it and understand it in a way so that it's not something that creates pressure or insecurity for us, but it's something that when we tap into it at a deeper level, it enriches our life. It's something that we use to our advantage. And I started asking this question, and I'd love to know if you guys have asked this question, what am I here for? Like, why am I alive? Have you guys ever asked the question, why am I here? Why am I alive for? Like, what's the point of this whole thing? Like, we've all asked that question on some level. And I started asking that question from a very early age, as I imagine every human is asking that question. And when you ask that question from different places, you come up with different answers. And for a lot of my life, because I didn't have a very clear answer, I thought I was broken. I thought there was something wrong with me. I thought that I wasn't successful at life because, well, if I'm going to be successful at life, well, I should have a really good answer for that. Like, I should know the answer to that question. And if I don't know the answer to that question, well, there's either something wrong with me, or I've dropped the ball, or somehow I'm missing out in life. So there can be all these conclusions that we arrive at if we don't feel like we've got a really robust or a really juicy answer. Does that resonate with you guys at all? At some point, feeling like you either didn't know the answer or you should know the answer, and it can create a lot of pressure unnecessarily. And so what we're looking to do here with this topic of purpose is we're looking to remove the pressure of not knowing the answer. And we're looking to move beyond this notion of, if my life is to be successful, then I need to have a purpose really well defined, and I've got to be living it, and I need to wake up every single day inspired and alive, and reciting my purpose statement in front of the mirror, feeling like I'm like we're wanting to move away from this idea of purpose meaning anything about your success or worthiness, or whether or not you're living a good life, to just being something that when you tap into it, which is ultimately a feeling, when you tap into it, it just kind of feels nice, and it feels like your life has a greater sense of meaning. So we're going to explore the topic of purpose today, and as we go through this conversation, I definitely will recommend that you write down any questions or any challenges or anything that you don't agree with. And if there's things that come up in this conversation that feel almost counterintuitive to everything that you feel like great, write them down. Let's get a conversation going as we go through the conversation. So first of all, I'll just say that there's a quote from Mark Twain here that I'll read to you, which is, "The two most important days in your life are the day that you were born and the day that you find out why." Now, I really love that quote because it kind of sounds very romantic, and it kind of sounds like it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. But there's a flip side to that quote as well, which is, if you know that you've had the most important day of your life, which was one of them, which was when you were born, and then you're now waiting for the second most important day that hasn't come yet, unless you understand this notion of purpose is a very natural, organic thing that doesn't need to be stressed and worried over, you might spend the vast majority of your life waiting and wishing to arrive at that day at some point in your future. So you could end up wishing your life away or criticizing every single moment leading up until that point, feeling like something's wrong or feeling like you're missing the almost like you're missing the secret sauce to life. Love that, Dave. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is today. Absolutely. That's really what we're doing here today, is we're realizing that actually there isn't two most important days in your life. There is only one most important day of your life, and that is this day, today. That's the most important day of your life, is today, because that's the only day you're ever going to experience. And so what we're really looking to do here with this exploration of purpose is we're looking to understand, what is it? Why do we need one, or do we even need one? And then also looking at, well, how do we tap into deeper levels of feeling connected to a purpose? So how do we get greater clarity on that? All the way through to, how do we live it? How do we embody it? And so I'm going to take you through a series of distinctions and questions, and we've got a few processes that are going to bring you to a greater level of clarity on your purpose this week. And I like that, Dave. Every day I'm upright and breathing is the most important day. Yes, absolutely. And even if you're not upright, if you're still breathing, absolutely, yeah. So let's dive into, when we're talking about purpose, what are we actually talking about? Well, if we go back to the metaphor that I used last week, which was imagine that we're in a boat and we're sailing across the ocean. And our vision was where we're going to. The rudder of the ship is orientating us in the direction so we can kind of turn, and it's sending us in the direction, which is like the rudder. And then the purpose is like the reason why we're in the boat in the first place. So it's like, well, why are we even moving? Why are we in a boat? Why are we not in an aeroplane? Why are we not walking? So it's really the deeper essence for what we're wanting to experience and why we're wanting to experience it. So I would fundamentally say that purpose is the reason for our existence, or the reason why we are experiencing life, or the reason why we do anything. So it's based on reason. There is some kind of rationale about what is the thing that I want to experience. It's based around intention. There's a fundamental human desire that we all share to experience, or to the desire to experience something. Now, you might use the word intention for what do you intend that you want to experience. You might use the word purpose for what's the reason why you want to experience that. So you'll start to see there is a lot of overlap when we start exploring a couple of these different terms. So, you might say that the intention for your life is your purpose. The intention for the moment might be your little micro purpose. So, for example, in this class today, you might set a little intention for what do you want to get out of this masterclass. Another way of saying that would be, what's your purpose for being here right now? So you can have a purpose in this moment. You can have a purpose for being in a relationship. You can have a purpose for being in a business. You can have a purpose for just life in general. So there is a lot of different contexts that you can have a purpose for in life. So really what we're talking about here is, in this class, we're talking about your macro purpose, your big picture purpose for why you're playing the game of life. But you can apply everything that we're going through here today in everything, in your relationship, in your career, in your finances, in every part of life. It's the same phenomenon playing out. So another word for purpose is it's your reason for being. Your reason for being, or your big why. The deeper essence of what you want to experience. So again, there's a reason why we use the word human being, and one of the very innate aspects of what it means to be human, to be a being, is we all share desire. We all share this notion that we call free will, or intentional, this innate desire to experience something. We have an orientation that's pulling us towards a particular experience, or magnetizing us, almost like There's a force of gravity that pulls us towards things. So there is an internal force that is drawing us towards wanting to have particular experiences. So really, purpose is a version of what do you want? It's what do you want to experience in life? Now, the vision is more along the lines of what do you want to experience in the future. So it's future tense. It's a thing that you want to create, which is if you want to envisage a timeline for life, the vision would be where you're going to end up at some point in the future, where you see yourself going. Whereas purpose is more in the now. Purpose is more about what's the reason for being in life right now. Like what's the significance? What are you wanting to experience in this moment? So it's more about bringing a present moment awareness to your life rather than thinking about, well, where am I heading to? It's more about, well, what do I want to experience in this moment? And as soon as I realized that purpose can be experienced in this moment without needing to do anything in the outside world, I gained an incredible amount of freedom in my life. And I'll explain to you what I mean, because where I eventually ended up with my exploration of purpose was that I started out writing a purpose statement and having an articulation of what purpose was. And for me, it was about, impacting lives, and it was about having a particular amount of net worth, and it was all these worldly things. It was all these situations and circumstances, which are just things. It was the acquisition of things, which is basically I wanting to get from this situation right now in this moment to another moment, right? Which is fundamentally I'm wanting to avoid this moment. I'm wanting to get out of this moment because I don't like this moment. I'm wanting to get to another moment. Now, for a lot of people, their purpose is exactly that. It's I hate my life, or there's something wrong with this moment right now, and I want to exit it and get as far away from that as possible. Can any of you guys relate at some point in your life feeling like you just wanted to get out of this moment? It's like, I want to be as far from this present moment as I possibly can. I've been there. And so we don't want to fall into the trap of creating a purpose to escape this moment. We're wanting to create and tap into purpose which enriches this moment, that adds a dimension of acceptance of our current experience, of our current reality. So yeah, just reading out the comments there. We've got a comment there from Dave. My life had become all about arriving at another moment. It all became about the destination. And this is the balance in life. This is about realizing that, well, the destination is a thing it's a concept. It's not a real thing. It's an idea. We have an imaginary idea about what lies in our future. And so that idea, that is, for a lot of people, it's an idea that takes them away from the very essence of what life is about. They're playing the game of I need to repair myself, or I need to fix myself, or I need to remedy this life because this life in some way, shape or form is broken or not good enough, or it's gone wrong. And so what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to recognize that we're wanting to tap into the good vibes and the good feelings without denying the journey that we're currently on in this moment. And so the whole point of this purpose class is to enrich our life by tapping into a deeper feeling for why we're here. Not to deepen the insecurity and the worry and the sense of my life is broken, get me out of here, I want to catapult myself out of this experience. We're actually looking to engage more in the present moment and experience a greater richness of life regardless of what the circumstances are. So, and I'll give you an example of when I realized what purpose was really about for me, was it shifted from my purpose being a thing that I needed to achieve to a state of being that I wanted to experience. Like that's a fundamental shift in purpose. When you change the purpose of your life being from I need to achieve or create something out there in the future to being something that you now are placing an intention on in this present moment that allows you to enjoy and to fully engage in life and welcome the experiences of life, regardless of what the facts or the situations are around you. And so for me, that's one of the most powerful purposes And there's many of them. There isn't a purpose. There isn't a right purpose. There isn't a wrong purpose. There isn't the one for you or the one for me. There is many different layers of purpose, as you'll discover as we go through this class. And one of the purposes that I find really, really beautiful is the purpose of my life is just to be. Like, it's just to be. It's just to be. Now, that might kind of sound simple, but for me, it's like if I'm actually being, then I'm allowing my experience of life to unfold in the moment without needing to change it. And it almost might seem silly. Like, let me know if you almost, when you hear that, it might almost sound like, oh, come on, Chris, you're into personal development and you're into, like, all this fancy stuff of living a great life. Come on, surely you can come up with something better than that. And there is many different ways to look at this, but for me, that's one of my, it feels like one of the most powerful purposes is allowing myself to be present in this moment, regardless of what's going on around me, is to just be in life, to be fully engaged in the experience without feeling like I've got to change it because it's broken or something's going wrong. Now, obviously that needs to be balanced with an understanding of, well, we also need to infuse into that a sense of intention. So we're wanting to say, great, I want to allow life and I'm wanting to be in life. And I would also like to be in a certain experience or live in a certain way. So it's going beyond just saying, well, I'm going to take my hands off the wheel and just kind of see where it's almost like we're floating in a raft going down a river. And you can kind of take your hands off the paddle and just say, hey, I'm just going to float down the river. And I could go anywhere. I might go down that fork in the river or down that fork in the river. Let's just see what the luck of the draw is. Now, that's one way of living. Now, you could say to a degree, that's being. I'm just going to see what happens. Or you could say, well, I'm going to be, and I'm going to be fully in that boat, bouncing around. I'm probably going to get splashed. I'm going to get thrown out a few times. And I'm also going to paddle. Like, I'm also going to paddle in the direction that I want to go. Like, I get to a fork in the road. I can go left or go right. You know what? I would like to go right because that looks like it's more my thing. So it's being in the moment and recognizing, yeah, you might get lost, you might get thrown out of the boat, you might lose your paddle. And at the same time, there is a natural orientation that we've got towards particular experiences. We have a natural orientation towards, it's like a magnetism that's drawing us towards particular things. Now, that is something that I think is really important to honor about life, is there are certain things that Dave loves that Heidi doesn't. You might like rugby, you might like cycling, right? You might, no, there we go. No. So there's different things that we have different preferences in life. Life is about honoring and expressing our preferences. So it's about being and then also seeking our highest preferences. What I mean by highest preferences are, what are the things that we are magnetized by? What are the things we're in resonance with? What are the things that we desire on a deeper level? What are the things that we are drawn towards? Almost like we feel like there's a gravitational pull that's pulling us towards a particular experience. So that's the thing that we want to honor. And that's what we're looking to tap into when it comes to purpose. So I'm going to suggest we're starting to infuse these two elements. Being in the now and being fully accepting of life, and then also infusing the what do we want to create? What do we want? Like it's the what do I want? And even if I don't get what I want, how can I enjoy it anyway? So these are the ingredients. When you infuse these into this exploration of purpose, purpose becomes a really beautiful way of understanding life without feeling pressure. So, why do we need a purpose, and do we actually need a purpose? Well, first of all, I'm going to suggest that perhaps we don't need a purpose, right? Perhaps you could just live in the moment with no intention, with no sense of needing to do anything. Like if you were completely in the moment, you could just sit in silence. You could just sit in silence and close your eyes and just be content. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think there's more to life than probably just being in a state of nothingness. Like there's a reason why we've been given feelings and thoughts and experiences, and my take on that is that life is this choose your own adventure game where we get to we literally get our own avatar being this human, and we get to we get this ultimate computer game controller where we get to control ourselves and go through life playing all sorts of little games and throwing ourselves into all sorts of different situations and really playing the game of life. And this is like a computer game. This is the game of life. And I'm just reading the comments there. Thank you, Deddy. Nice one. We are here to play the game of life. And part of playing the game of life is getting clear on, great, if I could create anything for my life, what do we want to create? So I'm going to suggest that our purpose is something that allows us to play the game at a deeper level. It's something when you experience a connection to a purpose, it's like instead of just playing a game for the sake of it, you've now got a reason to play the game. You've now got, there's an outcome to create. There is something compelling about why you're even in the game. And so I like to think, you could go through life with no purpose and just kind of just live. Or you go through life with some sort of sense of a deeper intention for what you wanted to experience. And when you overlay that over the normal experiences of life, you spice it up a bit. You inject some spice. It's like you add some really delicious, spicy flavoring to your food. Instead of eating a meal that's just completely bland, you're now spicing it up, and it's now you're creating this delicious meal. So that's what we're looking to do with purpose. And that's really what this conversation is about. It is about how do we spice up life. So I trust that answers the question of why do we need a purpose. Now, at the same time, you don't need a purpose, but I would strongly suggest that when you have a deeper connection to purpose, there's something that is more comprehensive about life. There's something that's deeper. There's a deeper feeling that soaks through our being, that now gives us a spring in our step. It gives us a reason to kind of hold our head high. It gives us something that is going to be a pillar of strength to stop us from being blown around in the wind. So it is an element there that strengthens our resolve. It strengthens our sense of fortitude. It brings us a greater level of resilience and also desire for how we want to show up to life. So there's a couple of little elements here for how to consider what purpose really is at a deeper level. And I'm just going to comment here on some of the questions that are coming through. So we got here the one from Dave. There's a series of books called Choose Your Own Adventure. At the bottom of the page, you could choose which way you wanted the story character to go. There we go. Great. So here we go. So yes, every single moment of your life is a choose your own adventure moment. It is it's a little micro moment where you have a fork in the road, and psychologists estimate there's about 30,000 choices that we make every single day. So you have 30,000 fork in the road moments to choose your destiny. Now, you might not realize that, but like even right now, like for example, the hand that you are writing with, like at some point you chose to write with that hand. Right? Even like consciously or unconsciously, that was a choice that made. You chose to get your hair cut in a particular style. You're choosing to lean on one arm or the other arm right now more than the other. Right? You're choosing to write certain things down and not write other things down. Right? There's a whole range of different choices that we're making in the moment. Now, our purpose also has this powerful effect of guiding more of those decisions in a particular direction. So when you're more present and you're more engaged and more aware of a purpose, a lot of those choices that you would have made unconsciously are made more consciously. Because now you have a greater awareness of, hang on, if I've got this purpose where I want to experience more of this, well, I'm now wanting to be more aware of these 30,000 choice points that are occurring every single day, knowing that, well, yeah, if I'm really wanting to live a life where I'm fully engaged in creating and experiencing that purpose, well, wouldn't I want to make sure that most of those 30,000 choices are kind of heading in that direction? So we're now starting to be more accountable to our choices, starting to be more reflective of our choices. And really my take on choices is that a choice is really only a choice if you're aware of it. If you're not aware of your choices, you're living your life by habit. Now that's not a problem, that's the way that the human is designed, but as soon as you become aware of your habits, another way of saying as soon as you become aware of your unconscious choices, you now have an opportunity to reorient those choices or challenge those choices. And so this is a beautiful exploration of as soon as you become aware of a choice, like a good example right now, I can see, Heidi, you've got your right hand there. Like, you could have had your left hand. Right? Now that you're aware of that, you go, oh, hang on, should I be using my right hand or my left hand? And it's like, so now with that information that's brought to your awareness, you can now become more conscious of, oh, interesting, okay, well, is that something that's in my highest good? Are these choices something that's in my highest good? So your purpose is something that brings you into a greater level or gives you a greater level of consciousness about how are you making choices from moment to moment. So your purpose is, another way of looking at your purpose is it creates a significant degree of life force within you. Now what I mean by life force is it's like taking a car and souping it up, putting a turbocharger on it, doubling the horsepower, and it's now going to accelerate faster up the street. So that's kind of what we're doing with purpose, is it's really like supercharging your engine of your car. That's really what it's doing. So that is I think it's a beautiful metaphor to think, okay, great, if I supercharge my purpose, if I really get connected to my purpose from the place of inspiration rather than fear, because you can motivate yourself from fear or you could motivate yourself from inspiration. There's two different sources of horsepower there. And so the reason why I'm sharing that with you is because if you have an unconscious insecurity or a fear that's kind of built into your purpose, potentially you're kind of waking up in the morning and you're now insecure about it. You're now insecure about whether or not it happens in the way that you want it to, as opposed to when you're living in inspiration and it's designed from inspiration. There's a level of love and compassion there to know, well, you know what? Some days I might not be fully connected to that, and that's okay. So we're now placing less value on whether or not we're expressing that purpose, and we're now more in gratitude for when we are experiencing it, and we're judging it less for when we're not experiencing it. Does that make sense? So this is I'm wanting to give you some of these really foundational distinctions, because if we are not aware of these, then you can go off racing into the distance saying, great, I want to create my purpose statement. I'm going to write a beautiful purpose statement. I'm going to do all this work on purpose. But if we haven't addressed the deeper fabric of what's inside it, you can end up living your life out through a lens of fear or insecurity, thinking that it's coming from a place of inspiration. And you're waking up feeling a little bit insecure about life, or stressed or anxious, feeling like maybe your life hasn't got value or meaning, and you won't know why. And it's because there's a little weed of fear in the garden there that's really going to prevent you from accessing the highest level of inspiration. So I think purpose is also, to a degree, I think it's also about honoring our uniqueness. We all, there's 7.7 billion humans on this planet at this time, and we're not all the same. And there's a reason why we're not all the same. And I believe that we each have our own unique expression. There's something unique, almost like I call it our signature expression. Just like no one else has the same set of fingerprints as you. No one else has the same signature as you. There is no one else in this whole entire world that's the same as you. Now you've got to get really curious about that. Why is there no one else exactly the same as you? That's because you have been given a particular essence. There is a particular signature expression that you have in your DNA, in your soul, in your spirit. There's something that's here for you to bring to the world that is like no one else. Your personality, your attributes, your preferences. Like, you are one of a kind, and there will never ever be another version. There will never be another identical version of you. Never. So I think a big clue here as we explore purpose is your uniqueness. What makes you unique? Now, I'm going to give you a series of questions that are going to help you tap into your purpose. So I'm going to give you a structure that's going to help you get greater clarity and have some insight around this. But before I give you those questions, I'm really wanting to make sure that we understand what are the foundational elements. What's the foundation for us to then build our understanding of purpose on top of? Because if we start going racing off into the distance, trying to construct a notion of purpose without having rectified some of the big misunderstandings and some of the big go-wrongs, this whole conversation can go south pretty quick. So I'm wanting to share with you the ways to really enrich your experience and use purpose to your advantage in a very light and beautiful way, rather than seeing it as a weight or an obligation or something, an extra thing to do, an extra thing to figure out or worry about. So your uniqueness is really important. There's something unique about you that you have been gifted with, your attributes, your personality, your skill sets. There's a very unique set of elements that make up your being. And that's part of what I believe our purpose is there to reveal to us, is what's the uniqueness that we are here to express in the world? What's our gift to the world? So that's another great question, is what's my gift? What am I here to give? Now, you could also ask a question, what am I here to take? But generally, the question of what am I here to give is generally a higher level of reward. As Tony Robbins says, the secret to living is giving. And when we are able to tap into our gift and we're able to give, the rewards that we receive far eclipse anything that we could ever take, any worldly possession or anything that we could acquire in terms of possession. So the gift of giving is the gift that just keeps on giving, because it just creates these amazing feelings of contribution, of value, of meaning, of knowing that we're playing the game of life to co-create, to contribute to the greater good of life, rather than to damage life or to contaminate life or to take things away from life. So we're talking about enriching. How do we enrich life? How do we give to life in such a way that it's resourceful and that it actually gives back to us? So that's what a deeper part of this conversation is about, is how can I give to life such that I get given back far more as a return on investment? For me, purpose is one of the greatest return on investments, because when you tap into how do you give in such a way that you're authentic, that you're giving in alignment and in resonance with the things that you love, in alignment with your preferences, when you tap into that level of giving, it doesn't drain your energy. It actually gives you energy. And you're spot on there, Deddy. Giving starts the process of receiving. You also need to be able to allow yourself to receive the gifts that are going to come from life. So another core part of purpose here is finding what brings you inspiration. What is it that inspires you? There's something about the feeling of inspiration. And the distinction that I'll give you here that I think is helpful is there's a difference between this is just a distinction, right? So this is a linguistic distinction. So this is not an absolute dictionary definition, but a good distinction here would be knowing the difference between inspiration and motivation. So inspiration, meaning the word, the origin of the word inspire is the Latin root word meaning spirit. Inspire comes from spirit, which actually the original source of that word means wind. So it actually means wind, which is, if you look at the nature of the word wind, it is this invisible energy that's just flowing. And so that's really another way of thinking about our spirit, is it's an invisible energy that gives momentum, that gives flow to our life. So that's what we're looking to tap into when we're talking about inspiration, is what's the spirit, what's the inspired, in spirit flow that we're looking to tap into. Motivation, on the other hand, is more about what is the external thing that I'm looking to get to what's that thing that I'm responding to, as opposed to what's the internal thing that's driving me, that's actually the current of my life. So I'd say there's a distinction there between when you know that you're more driven internally by what feels natural to you, rather than going after, I need to achieve that thing, or I need to get that thing. That's a far more powerful and more authentic force. Not to say that there's a right or a wrong, but they're just different. They're different forces. It's like there's a difference between pushing and pulling. And inspiration is one of those forces that is, it guides you in ways that are so incredibly magical and powerful that when you're fully tapped into inspiration, you're coming from a place beyond anything out there or any result that's out there in the world. You're now coming from an internal, connected, magical place that's far beyond any worldly creation that you could ever create. So it's tapping into the force of creation. So inspiration, I'd say, is more aligned with the creator. What's the creator aspect of you? Whereas motivation is more about what is being created. So we're getting connected to what's the force that's doing the creating, as opposed to what are we looking to create. So there's just two different aspects of the conversation I think are really useful when we're looking at purpose. There's a few myths about purpose that I feel is worth bringing up. The first myth is that you only have one purpose. That's just not true. There are different contexts for purpose. So you can have, as I said before, you can have a purpose for your relationship, you can have a purpose for life, you can have a purpose for being a parent. And so there isn't just one purpose. There's not like one correct answer. There's just lots of different answers and lots of different understandings of the notion of purpose. Another myth is that you will have this magical moment, this euphoric revelation where you have this one moment and one moment only where your life purpose kind of falls out of the sky, almost like call it the piano of purpose falls out of the sky and literally like just hits you. Like in my experience, I don't think purpose is set up that way. It reveals itself over time. It is a process. There's a revealing effect that is taking place. And I think a good metaphor for this is when a tree is growing. When a tree starts to grow, when it's a seed, it doesn't necessarily know what it is. It doesn't even know what it's going to grow into. It doesn't know what fruit it's going to grow. It doesn't know what color or type of fruit that it's going to produce. But at some point, it then is able to distinguish, oh, I'm an apple tree. Oh, that's what I am. I'm an orange tree. Or, oh, wow, I'm a pine tree. At some point, the tree discovers what it's producing, what is its fruit. And that's what we're all in the process of discovering, is what is the gift, or what's the fruit that my life is producing, that I'm giving to the world. And so a big part of that is being patient to realizing that you might not have discovered it yet, but it is a process that's unfolding. So with that greater context, we can take the pressure off ourselves and worry less about when is it happening and has it happened yet, and am I an apple tree or am I an orange tree? What is it? It's like, well, you're going to produce some kind of fruit. Let's enjoy the unfolding of that process. Absolutely, Dave. Thank you for quoting me. I'll have to write that one down. I'll have to create a book of quotes from all of this. I think that's a good project to embark upon. So that's the second myth, which is, it's not one thing, and it's not just gonna fall out of the sky. It is a process that will reveal itself over time. So patience is required. I would say that's a really important part of this whole thing. And I would also say that another big myth about purpose is that it doesn't change. Like, that's a huge myth. Your purpose is going to change as many times as it changes. Since I've really started reflecting on purpose, my purpose has changed hundreds of times, like in terms of my understanding of purpose, and in the same way as your understanding of various different experiences has changed. Like, for example, if any of you guys have ever been away traveling before, like, for example, when I first traveled to Spain, I had an idea about what Spain was like. Now, it's one of my favorite countries, but when I was there, like I realized, gee, they don't speak English here. Really, they didn't speak a lot of English, and wow, gee, they eat a lot of meat. Wow, there's not a lot of vegetarian dishes over here. Like, there's all these sorts of things that I realized, but until I actually got to Spain and realized what it was like, it was just a concept. And so the same thing exists here with purpose, is until you fully embody it and you feel it and you allow yourself to go through the journey of really testing it and exploring it, then you will always just have a concept of it that always has a deeper level of richness that you are yet to tap into. So there is a part of this journey that you just have to allow the process to unfold. It's really is focusing on plant the seed, water the roots, not water the fruit. And when you water the roots, the tree's going to grow. And you don't necessarily know what it's going to grow into. You don't know how much fruit it's going to grow. You don't even necessarily know what kind of fruit that you're going to grow. Right? But it's focusing on what are the most nourishing and enriching activities you can do in your life that are going to maximize the production of fruit. And it's not, I would say it's not even about maximizing it. It's really about producing the fruit that you know in your heart is in alignment with why you're here. It's about producing something. It's not about quantity. I'd say it's not even necessarily about quality. It's about what is the thing that just at the deepest part of your being, you just know, yeah, that's the thing that I want to create, because it just feels in resonance. It just feels like that. And of all the things I could choose on the menu of life, what would I choose? I'd choose that, because it just feels like it's me. It feels like it's what I'm here to do. Not because it's what it looks good to others or because it's going to be this much money. It's like, no, that's what I'm here to do, because that's what I've been given. That's my gift. That's my authentic greatness to give to the world. So I'd say that's probably a more helpful consideration when we're contemplating purpose, rather than looking at measuring ourselves or comparing ourselves to others. I'd say comparison here is probably not helpful. So what's more important is it's tapping into our authentic greatness. And I define greatness as less about the enormity of what you create, and it's more about what feels true for you. I'd say it's more, greatness is more about expressing what's true for you rather than anything else. Because if you're orientating yourself towards authenticity and truth, you're going to find yourself in resonance with life. So that's the other myth, which is that it doesn't change. I'd say the other myth is that a lot of people have a misunderstanding to think that their purpose is a thing that they do. Your purpose is not a thing to be done. It's not even an action. It's not a job. It's not a business. It's not a thing. It's an expression that arises within you. So it's a feeling. It really is there's a deeper feeling. It is a sense of meaning. So I'd say that's the difference between coming up with a purpose that's just another thing to do versus a way of being. So that's really what we're pointing to here, is your purpose is the way that you want to be. How are you here to be in the world? Now, what naturally will happen is when you tap into the being nature of your purpose, the doing happens automatically from that place. The doing becomes more of a natural effect of the being. I like that, Deddy. Plant the seeds, water the roots, and the result will take care of itself. Greatness is more about expressing your truth. Absolutely. I would say that's the true measure of greatness, is the amount of truth that you tap into. What is true for you? And that takes courage, that takes tenacity, that takes understanding yourself. That takes a lot of, that's like, to be the true expression of who you really are. You know, that, I'd say that's the real powerful, beautiful game that's worth playing in life. That's the most important game, is being the real you. And from that being state, when you tap into that being state, the doing becomes more obvious. It becomes more natural. It becomes, you're now doing less from hustle and, I've got to do this because someone says I've got to do this, and you're now doing it because you want to do it. You're now engaged in life. You're tapping into inspiration. I've got your question there, Heidi. I'll come back to that again. So if I forget that, just remind me. I would say another core aspect here of what contributes to us feeling connected to purpose is growth. Which I would say is a realization of what we actually are at our core. So what I mean by that is, at the deepest essence of what we are in life, is we are consciousness, we are source energy, we are inseparable. Like, we are the fabric of life. Like, life is flowing through us, it is part of us. You cannot separate yourself from the material and the substance that is life. We are inseparable. You can't separate a wave from the ocean. The wave is part of the ocean. All the droplets of the ocean are all connected. They are all part of the same substance. So there is no separation from us from life. We are one and the same. In the same way, right now, as you look on this screen, you can see there's a whole lot of boxes, and it looks like we're peering into each other's living rooms. But if you actually look at the screen, there is no separation. There's just pixels of light. There is just pixels of light on a screen. And we have somehow drawn a line around that and conceptualized that's you, that's you, that's you. But in reality, there's just a screen. And all those dots are all connected. And so the same life force that's flowing through all of you is flowing through me, and it's beyond ways that we could ever conceive of. And I mean, that's the deeper essence of exploring, what life is really about, is the connection to what is that? What is that deeper spirit that's flowing through life? And so that's a core part of what life is about, is a deeper understanding about what is this invisible intelligence that's flowing through life? Like, what is this? And I don't know that we'll ever necessarily find out the answer to that, but I'd say that's another beautiful game that we can play, is curiosity. Getting really curious about what is the structure of what's behind this reality, and not needing an answer, but allowing curiosity to do the heavy lifting. And what I mean by that is, curiosity is the doorway to truth. Curiosity is the doorway that we open that leads to understanding, and then understanding leads to realizing what is actually true. So curiosity here is a really important ingredient, where we don't need to know something, but we're approaching it with a sense of exploring the unknown. And when you can approach exploring the unknown with a sense of lightness, it makes the whole journey of discovering and tapping into purpose far more delightful. I think another key element here inside really tapping into what purpose is understanding what makes you feel alive. Like, what makes you feel truly alive. And there's a reason why we are living. And I think the clue is in the title. We're here to be live. We're here to live. So what is it that makes you feel the most alive? The opposite of that is what makes you feel bored and dull and like you're not wanting to engage or participate in life. When you ask yourself what makes me feel the most alive, that yields some really powerful answers. Like, some of the most powerful answers that you're going to discover come when you ask the question, what makes me feel the most alive? And even beyond that, how can I bring a feeling of being even more alive regardless of what I'm doing? How can I bring aliveness to this moment, even if this moment looks like it's the dullest moment in my life? How can I inject life force into this moment to bring inspiration to it? Not to rely on it to happen to us, but to actually bring it to life. To choose to inject life with inspiration and life force for no other reason than, well, you could either choose to spice up your life or not, as the Spice Girls say. So So this becomes more of a choice. This now becomes a choice when you realize that you might have been waiting for life to bring you inspiration. You now realize, I've been choosing for some of my 30,000 choices in my day to not choose to bring inspiration to my life. That now gives you a new resource. That now gives you a new ability to see, I haven't been choosing inspiration. I've been choosing boredom or regret, or I've been choosing disenchantment. Why am I choosing that? I'm going to choose differently. So we now have an expanded range of choices when we can recognize where we're not choosing inspiration or we're not choosing love. Nice one, Dave. So we've covered, there's a few of these core pillars of purpose that we're really tapping into that I wanted to share with you, which are the major considerations that are going to allow you to get the most out of the exploration that's going to happen this week. So I'll add a couple of extra elements to be aware of, which is, don't worry about getting it right. There is no right, there is no wrong. Don't be attached to the answers that you come up with, because we're just getting curious and we're exploring. The answers in this exercise are not going to tell you whether or not you're doing life right or wrong or not. The answers here are simply going to be leading you towards greater clarity. And don't compare yourself to anyone else. Don't compare yourself to anyone else's journey. You've got your journey, which is very, very unique. You've got a unique set of conditions and circumstances in your life. So there's no point comparing you and your life to anyone. There's no point even comparing yourself to yourself. Like the function of comparison, when laced with judgment, really just condemns humans. It just condemns us based upon some idea that there is some kind of race, or there is some kind of yardstick to measure ourselves against. And so it's easy to do, but recognize that everyone here has got our own set of conditions and our own set of influences. You're born into a particular country, you have a particular set of parents, you've got your own particular character traits, your own personality. There's a whole range of different factors that you've experienced, and they're all perfect for your journey. And the reason why they're perfect for your journey is because you've got all the necessary wisdom right now in life. You've got access to it on tap. And it's called consciousness. It really is this pre-existing intelligence that is already there. It's innate. When you've got a clear mind, when you're not insecure, you've got all the wisdom you could ever draw upon on tap in this moment. Now, sometimes when we're experiencing insecure thinking or frustration or stress, sometimes it looks like that infinite creative intelligent resource is being diminished. But it's not that it's being diminished, it's just that our experience has been contaminated in the moment with a bit of fear or insecurity. So it just means that our access to that wisdom has been obscured. And so when we come back to a state of presence and a clear mind, that wisdom is back to full capacity. So I'm going to share with you some of the questions. Actually, I'll paste them into the chat so you guys can see some of the questions that you're going to be enjoying reflecting on this week, which is going to be a great reflection. So here's the first 11, and then here are the next 13. And these are the questions you're going to reflect on during the week. So I'm just going to cover a few of these, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of them that I feel like are probably significant. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to go through these questions and reflect on them and answer them in your own time. And you might, like Dave, decide to jazz up your experience a little bit. However you decide to approach these questions, I encourage you to reflect on what is the most authentic answer for you. So don't feel like you've got to get this right. Don't feel like you need to share your answers necessarily with anyone. Don't feel like you need to stand behind them or prove that your answers are correct. But these are the questions that are going to guide you towards greater clarity when it comes to purpose. So there's a couple here that I feel like are probably going to be helpful to reflect on. And the first one I'm going to suggest is number 7. What are the common themes that have been unfolding for my greatness, happening through me and for me, not to me? So what I mean by that question is, for example, in my life, there were some common themes that I experienced in my life that I feel like have guided me towards having an even greater level of inspiration and greater sense of meaning for living. And one of those is I spent most of my life feeling very pressured and feeling very, I'd say pressured by my parents, particularly, but I felt pressured by my dad to have a particular level of success, that I should go into a particular career. Let me know if you guys can relate to either experiencing some form of pressure, either by a parent or maybe by society or someone in your life where you kind of felt compelled to go down a particular path. And it might not have been the most authentic. It might not have been what your heart was guiding you to do, but you know what? Well-meaning adults in your life or teachers or people around you might have suggested, you know what, Heidi, you should study physics because you're really good at maths, so you should study physics. Or Dave, you're really good at rugby. You should go into sport. You should study at some kind of sports academy. Or so for me, I was encouraged to pursue some very academic things. I was encouraged to pursue maths and physics and science and all these things which I was good at, but I didn't really love them. So there's a difference between doing something because you're good at it versus doing something because you love it, because it brings you life force. It inspires you, it lights you up. So anyway, I spent the best part of a 4-year degree studying mechanical engineering, and then I went on to spend about a decade working in the engineering industry. Now, it was a good career in the sense that I was good at it, but I knew the whole time that there was something missing in my soul. Like there was something that my soul and my being was calling out for that I never satiated, I never got to experience. So I basically denied all the things that I really was drawn towards because, well, I guess society's definition of success says that I should work in a job and, I don't really like it, but you know what, it pays pretty good. I guess money's important. I guess I should stick with that. And the whole time I really denied what I really felt I was born to do. So for me, that was a big wake-up call. And I was a bit slow to get that wake-up call, but I got there eventually after about, I was 30 years old when I got that wake-up call. And I realized I no longer want to spend my life living according to someone else's definition of success. And so I wanted to go on my own internal journey of inner success. And inner success for me was about how do I live my life the way that I know is in alignment with my true self. So again, it comes back to what's the most authentic version of me and what do I want to create, as opposed to what do my parents think that I should do versus what do my friends think I should do, what does society think I want to do. So that for me was a big theme, was honoring my own expression, figuring out what is it that I want to do. So a core principle there for me, which is a theme of my life, is now sovereignty. I want to follow what my heart is guiding me to do, not what other people want me to do. So it was a long way. It was a 30-year lesson to appreciate, great, one of the most important parts of my life here is to be sovereign, is to be self-expressed, is to really celebrate the fact that I've got the free will to choose what I want to do in my life. And I'm going to choose what I want, not what someone else wants. So that's an example of, that was a theme for me. So you might notice there are particular themes there for you. You might notice that there's been maybe a bit of a hero's journey, so to speak, that's been unfolding for you, which is life conspiring in your favor to teach you some really powerful lessons. And they'll all be different for all of you. So I encourage you to look for what some of those themes might be. Another question here I think is really good here is question 9. What makes me lose track of time? What makes me lose track of time? What are the things that when you're experiencing them, you're so engaged in life. Like in this, when I say things, it could be a feeling, it could be an expression, it could be you really love teaching or talking about a certain subject matter. What is it that brings you to such a level of presence that literally the concept of time dissolves around you? And I like to think of time is something that we only become aware of when we are not present. Time is only something you become aware of when you are now comparing or using your imagination or using your memory to kind of go out of this present moment. So when you're totally present in this moment, you won't know how long you've been here. Like right now, I have got to look at the clock to check in how long have we gone for, have I gone over time? Sometimes I get so connected with the moment, I completely lose track of time. So for me, I know that if I'm losing track of time, I know that I'm onto the secret source of life. I know that I'm connected. I know that I'm in the juiciness of life. I know that I'm in there. All right, so that's a clue for me. So a lot of these are clues and they're cues and things to pay attention to. Some of the other questions are, what do I love learning about? What are the things that, if you were stuck on an island for the next 50 years, and if you had to study something, you had to learn about something, what would you love to learn about? Like if you were forced to pick something, like what would you love to indulge in learning or exploring? These are the kinds of extreme questions that will guide you and orientate you towards tapping into, well, if I had to do that, well, I'd probably learn about this. And another good question that is not on the list, but I recommend writing this down as well, just to kind of stretch your thinking, is if you had to quit your current job or business right now and do something totally different, what would you do instead? Now, that question is designed to shift you into a completely different paradigm of thinking to suggest, well, look, if I wasn't allowed to do that, well, actually, I'd do what I've always wanted to do. So for me, for example, if I wasn't allowed to do, training and coaching and this field, the things that come up for me would be, well, I'd probably love to be a writer. I would love to be, maybe create music. I'd love to be like a DJ and maybe, create some kind of spoken word or maybe even be like a spiritual comedian or something, like just, I don't know, just like it's a great creative question that kind of takes you out of where you are now. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to take action on that, but it's just expanding your thinking to go, oh, wow, I never considered that. Just like when I used to be an engineer, I never thought if tomorrow I got the sack and if I had to quit my job, what would I do differently? I never really seriously entertained that self-inquiry. I only really started to do that later on in the piece when the pain level or the disenchantment with my career crept up to such a level that I now felt forced to, well, actually that might be coming up sooner than I think. So this is it's a really great reflection to say, well, if I was banned from doing what I'm currently doing, and if I had to do something different, what would I do? I like it, Dave. Air Force pilot, engineering, corporate, financial planner, business coach. There you go. Yeah, Deddy, personal mastery and leadership mastery. I can talk about these two topics all day long. Nice one. So there is going to be plenty of insights that are going to come through this process for you as you reflect on these questions. So I'll drop these questions in an email to you and then you can go through them. Now, my recommendation is that when you reflect on all of these questions, the best thing to do is allow yourself to be non-attached to any of the answers. Now, what I mean by that is no one necessarily needs to read these answers. So this is one of the great things I find about these exercises. If you automatically prepare yourself to know that, you know what, this is for my purposes only. This is my private exploration. I don't need to share this with my partner. I don't need to share this in the group. This is my own personal exploration. What it does is it allows you to move beyond any insecurities that you might have had. It allows you to fully consider all of the questions. And you might even sense that the answers that are coming through from some of the questions, if you were to share them with people, you might feel a little bit embarrassed. Right? I know when I first started answering these questions, when I was answering them, I thought, gee, I hope no one reads this. I hope no one reads these questions, because people are going to think I'm crazy, because I'm talking about all these weird, crazy stuff, and I'm talking about all these new ideas and great things, and I hope no one ever reads this. And then now, I'm not ashamed of any of that, because I'm just really accepting of where I'm at. But I also am aware that one of the things that's going to help you get the most out of this exercise is to take all the pressure off getting it right, or needing to say, hey Chris, look at all the great answers that I got. It's like, no. Let go of all of that. It really is a curious exploration that's just going to help you tap into some unknown part of yourself. That's really the point of this. It's to tap into the unknown. And who knows what's going to come out of it. It doesn't really matter what comes out of it. All that's going to come out of it is you're most likely going to go into a reflective state. You're going to deepen your self-awareness. You're going to have a greater level of understanding about what brings the most beautiful experiences to your life, as well as get greater clarity on why you're here. So it's really simple. So don't put any pressure on yourself, and don't feel like you've got any expectations to get anything profound out of it. That's, in my experience, that's the best way to have a profound experience, is not to expect anything from it, but fully commit yourself to it, knowing that no one has to read your answers. Does that make sense? Great. So now what you're going to do next is you are now going to, once you've reflected on these questions, and I'm going to recommend, if you're wanting to play the game full out, I recommend this is the sort of exercise or activity you could spend a good couple of hours doing. Like if you actually were to go into depth on each of these questions and reflect on them. And when I say depth, if you were to allow yourself 5 minutes per question to reflect into, you'll come up with some solid answers. Even if you were to reflect on one of these questions for 1 hour, the insights and the understanding and the realizations that you're going to tap into are going to be significant. But for the purposes of doing the process, I'd recommend probably between 1 hour and 2 hours to go through these 24 questions. And you may also like to voice record your answers. I find that voice recording is a great way of purging and getting out the answers. So the app that I recommend, that I've recommended earlier, is called Otter. And feel free to just record your answers using voice, and it will transcribe your answers for you as you're speaking into it, providing you're not slurring your words, and it will transcribe it for you and have a nice transcription of all your answers, which I think it's nice to be able to read through them and to go back through that and reflect on it. Because if you're anything like me, when I first went through these questions, some of the answers I got were quite liberating. They were quite profound, because I realized that I never give myself permission to fully indulge in asking myself some of these deeper questions, which is really going to the core of the true essence of our being. Right? So that's really what we're tapping into, is the core, authentic essence of our being. That's what these questions are all designed to elicit, the most meaningful, the most valuable experiences that we're seeking in life. So we're looking to get connected to our soul, to our higher self, to the deepest, whatever you believe in, whatever that deepest essence is behind your unique consciousness. We're looking to tap into that. So that's where we're looking to go with all this. So that is going to be between 1 and 2 hours. If you're fully committed and you really want to go deep, go 2 hours. And if you haven't got that much time, or you're not going to put that much time in, just go for 1 hour. So that would be my recommendation for the 24 questions. Now that's step 1. That's going to give you lots of insights. That's going to give you lots of realizations. That's going to give you perhaps a deeper level of understanding of yourself. The next step is you want to go through that, and you want to now start to highlight what are the words that resonate the most with you. What are the words or the phrases? What are the aspects of your answers that you feel like is something significant or something really special about those? So for example, some common themes might be coming up, like, I'd really like to create some kind of charity or give back to children, or help a particular type of industry or a particular type of person, or I've always really wanted to become a teacher, or maybe get into music. There might be some themes that are popping up, and you'll notice the ones that are the closest to your heart, and you want to highlight those or underline them. So get yourself a highlighter or underline it, and start to pay attention to what are the words that resonate the most with you. Now, the thing about words is that words are just simply metaphors. Words are just simply representations. So they just point to energy. They just point to a deeper fabric of feeling within you. And so those words are really significant clues. So you want to pay a lot of attention to what are the words that really stand out for you, that really resonate with you. Then what you're going to do is step 3 is you are now going to start to combine those words, and you're going to start to play with these words and with these phrases and with the insights that you've got from the first step. You're now going to start to architect and start to craft some kind of statement. Now bear in mind what I mean by statement. This could be a sentence, this could be a word, this could be a paragraph. This is going to be some form of written description that encapsulates the deepest essence of what you are really here to experience and who you are here to be in life. So let me give you some examples. When I first started doing this exercise, I answered the questions and I thought, okay, cool, I've got some good ideas, but now I've got to come up with some way of articulating this or representing what do these words mean, and how do I string this together in some coherent format. So I started out by saying, and the question you're going to write at the top of the page is, what's my true purpose? That's the question that you write at the top of the blank page, is what's my true purpose? Now, these previous questions and the reflection on what are these words that are in resonance with you, you're using those to help you tap into, well, if there was going to be some verbal representation of what that is, what might that be for me? And when I first started this out, I started out by saying, okay, well, the purpose of my life is to be happy. Great, that was line 1. Now, what you want to then do is you want to reflect on that and go, well, hang on, is that the most authentic, the greatest purpose? Is that the thing that feels the most resonance to me? Can I do better? And then I realized, yeah, okay, I want to be happy, I want to be joyful, I want to live in a state of gratitude, and I want to be very loving. Now that's pretty good, that's getting better, right? You agree that we've just up-leveled it from happiness to, we've just added a few extra beautiful ingredients here, so we've just up-leveled it. And then eventually about line 35 or 36, I ended up with, you know what, I want to be inspired and alive, I want to be conscious and courageous, I want to be going through life, living my life as the most ultimate adventure, where I'm creative and I'm giving and contributing and growing and living my best life ever. Right, now that was at line 36. Now you will keep going until eventually you get to a point where you feel like you've got it dialed in. You feel like, wow, what I've written here is a magical, beautiful expression of what life is about for me. So there's no limit, there's no end to the depth of what you can articulate about your life. Do you write in the future tense or in present tense? I would say you want to write it in the present tense, which is, well, it doesn't really matter. I would say usually it's to be. My purpose is to be. So if you use the word to be this, it's a being state. You might also write I am. I don't think it really matters. But the core essence of this is really capturing what is it that you feel is the most aligned, resonant, and truly authentic way of expressing yourself and being in the world. And to the point where I would say a really good gauge to know that when you've really tapped into something that's really closely in alignment with you is when that statement, when you read it out and when you really feel into it, it actually brings you to tears. It actually makes you cry because you think, wow, if I even got a drop of the essence of what that truly means to me, and if I was able to live that on a daily basis, wow, what a magnificent life. So I'd say that's a really good benchmark to know how close have you got to something that really lights you up, that is really significant and really special for the way that you want to show up to this life. So you will go through line after line revising this until you eventually get to something you feel like, yep, I got this dialed in. I feel like that's authentic. I feel it's powerful. And as I said, there's no right or wrong. this is going to change. So don't feel like you need to get the answer that's never going to change ever again. After I did this, the next day I did it again and I come up with a better answer. And then the next day after that, I did it again. And then, it's changed dozens and dozens and hundreds of times to the point now where in fact, I'll give you an example of what probably it is for me now. I mean, for me now, would that be interesting for me to share with you guys what my take on that is? Yeah, cool. So for me now, the purpose of my life, and I'm just reflecting in it now, the purpose of my life is to awaken, is to be fully awake to the enormity of what I truly am at my core, in terms of I want to awaken to the full nature of my consciousness, and I want to be fully self-expressed, to be fully self-expressed in this present moment, giving my gift to the world, knowing that regardless of whatever I create in my life, that I know that I'm connected to my spirit, I'm connected to the source of my being, and that I show up from moment to moment, playing my heart out, playing life to the full, knowing that I'm probably going to get battered around and slapped around a lot, and that's okay. And I'm not ever going to be this perfect human, but that's the beauty of being human, is that I get to play the game of life, and I get to play all out with courage and determination and joy, following my greatest resonance, following my deepest alignment, knowing that this life is the most precious and the most beautiful gift that I could ever be given, that exists in reality. And that's just what's coming through in this moment. And then I'll answer that same question tomorrow, and it'll be something different. It'll be a slight variation on that. But that, for me, that feels like I'm coming to the point of tearing up, of this is something that's really significant and really special for how I want to show up to life. So I know that when I'm getting the goosebumps and when I'm getting the tingles, I know I'm getting pretty close, right? But that's just an off-the-cuff example. I mean, if I was to reflect on that, if I was to put some time and energy into that, I would get to the point where I'd start tearing up, and I know, wow, I'm getting right into that. So that's just an example of kind of how to play with it. Nice one, Dave. A ship is safest when it's in the harbour, but that's not what a ship is created for. Absolutely. We are built for life. We are built for the present moment. We are fully equipped with all of the wisdom and intelligence in every single moment to guide us through life. So that's how you're going to go through your process and through the structure this week, to first of all answer the 24 questions. That's going to it's going to lubricate your thinking, and it's going to kind of give you a little bit of inspiration. You're going to then find what are the words that are in resonance with you, what are the words that are in alignment, what are the words that pop out off the page at you that you think, yeah, there's something special about that. And then once you've done that, you're now articulating some kind of phrase. It could be a word, it could be a sentence, it could be a paragraph, on if you were going to describe what is my true purpose. Well, what would you write, so that you know that you've got something that was so incredibly inspired, makes you feel alive, that it brings you to the point of tears of joy and gratitude and just knowing that you're tapping into your life force. So that's the exercise for this week. So there's no right, there's no wrong. No one needs to read it. But if you do feel inspired to share in the group, feel free to share your answers in the group. Because if you're doing it using Otter, it's great. You don't have to type it out, for number one. And then secondly, once you've articulated it, and once you've written whatever your statement is, if you feel inspired, if you feel like you want to share in the group, I'm sure all of us would really love to hear it. And at the same time, there's also no pressure. So the homework or home play for this week is to complete the exercise, and should you feel inspired enough to want to share it, that would be amazing. And at the same time, I also can appreciate that it might be something that's just personal to you, and that you want to keep private, in which case that's fine as well. So however you want to play it, whether you want to share it or not, it's all good. So this is your purpose expression. I was going to use the word purpose statement, but it's less about stating a fact, and it's more about this is the expression in the moment. And it's going to change tomorrow, and the day after that it will probably change, and it will probably keep changing for the rest of your life. And that's just the nature of purpose. So I'll add a few extra things here towards the end as we sort of round out the class for this week, which is part of my purpose, as well as all of everything that I've just shared with you, which also might seem counterintuitive, is also just to be. My purpose is to be, which is to allow my experience of life to unfold. So there's the magnetizing force of what am I pulled towards, as well as this other equal balancing force of allowing life to unfold in that way, in whatever way it unfolds. So it's a balance between having an intention and having an allowance for life and having acceptance of life. And then that's the ultimate combination. It's a great combo. So I definitely recommend infusing some of those elements into that as well, because in my experience, allowing ourselves to just be is one of the greatest gifts that we can ever give ourselves. Just allowing ourselves to just be in life without needing to change it, without needing to avoid it, or without needing to escape out of this moment. It might kind of seem simple to be, but there's so much to that. Just being present, being in the moment, welcoming and engaging in this moment. If you could be fully engaged in the moment, i.e., if you could welcome all experiences to you, you would never experience pain. The definition of what creates pain is we are not willing to engage in that experience. And I'm sure I've shared this metaphor again, but I'll share it again because I think it's a really important one, is that pain is like being chased by a dog. It's like barking at you, it's chasing after you. Now, as soon as you turn around and you stare the dog in the face and you say, I'm not gonna run from you anymore, you engage with it, and what happens is you create the opportunity to turn a fierce, ferocious, barking dog into a beautiful, cuddly puppy dog that just wants to kind of cuddle you or lick you. So it's turning into the eye of the storm, and it's kind of heading the other direction. It's saying, whatever was causing me fear or resistance, I'm actually now going to move toward it, and I'm going to bring it towards me. I'm going to welcome that experience to me so that I become so familiar with it and understand it that I turn it from being in resistance to being actually playing with it. We take something from being painful to being pleasurable. So I would say that's the important distinction there. The only difference between pain and pleasure is the degree to which you're willing to engage with that experience. I'll say that one again. And Dave, you might even want to be my quote capturer. The degree to which we experience pleasure and pain is determined by the degree to which we are willing to engage with those experiences that we find uncomfortable. So when you're fully willing to engage in an uncomfortable experience, it changes the game. It's kind of like if you were going into some kind of, let's just say if you're going in to play something like judo. If you're expecting to go into judo and expecting to not get hit or flipped, you'd probably be worried. You're probably thinking, I'm going to get hit. Whereas if you expect, I'm going to get flipped here. And you know what? As I'm getting flipped, let's enjoy being flipped. Like I'm going to be airborne. I'm probably going to hit the mat. You know what? Let's do it with a smile. Like bring it on. Okay, I'm going to cop a flip here. So it's really kind of changing your expectations or changing your experience to, instead of I'm not going to get hit, so yeah, I'm going to get hit, bring it on. And the next time I get flipped, I'm going to learn, and I'm going to be able to play with that. I'm going to be able to dance with that a little bit more. So I encourage you to enjoy playing with this idea of bringing uncomfortable experiences to you, so that you take that barking dog and you turn it into a really cuddly puppy dog. So anyway, that's the game. That's the suggestion for this week. And let us know if you have any questions in the group. Love to hear your shares. Should you feel open to share that, I'm sure we'd love to hear that. And at the same time, should you feel like you want to keep that private, that's absolutely fine as well. So that's it for this week, everyone. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your laughs. Thank you for your jokes. And thank you for your participation. So Have a great week, guys, and I shall see you very soon in the group. Much love.